Welcome, family, to the Kumi Valdez podcast. I am Daniel Price, and this is my beautiful wife, Dr. Kish Kumi Price. And we're bringing the episode to you today. Co-parents coming in hot. You know what I'm saying? So, hey, let's buckle up. Let's get ready for it. We're going to share some things with you, some of our experiences and how we manage those experiences.
Yes. And, we really, if you've been following along, we did ask y'all to be in prayer with us about this conversation. So we share what we need to share. We're going to do this by giving you 5 things that have really helped us and share some examples. And so we'll get started with the first one. The first one, big component is communication. Communication. I don't know. I'm gonna kind of start with the communication between parents, right? Um, the co-parents in general, but then also communication with the kids and co-parents, like how that works. So I will say for us, we had a very rocky start all across the board, like with all of the co-parents. So
Yeah,
we tried,
I think
right?
that I think
Yeah,
that the this was the probably one of the toughest parts about
yeah.
um, our whole journey so far is just the communication aspect. So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Yeah. And it's, I would say, I would venture to say that a lot of it has to do with, just the nature of the relationships. And obviously, if you don't know someone, you don't really know how to detect tone and mannerisms, behaviors. So I'll speak personally for me. I know I had a difficult time trying to have conversations in a way that I thought resonated with the other co-parents. Um, just because I'm just gonna be honest about it. Like I see, this is why I said no, but I'm gonna be honest about it. I was side eyeing and motives, right? Like just kind of okay. I know this is what the relationship was like before we got married, but now that we're married, like why are behaviors changing up? If it was all solid before, why is it a problem now? Just because, now we're married. So, um, and that was, that was not necessarily the best conclusion that I should have reached, right? Is that just because things got real sus, that it was because there was some ulterior motive there. But I can say that that did impact my ability to like really have healthy lines of communication because in my mind I'm carrying that the weight of questioning, right? Like what are your motives here? And can we actually develop a relationship or are you still interested in my husband? And so now you want to X me out before I even get a chance to enter. I'm trying to double dutch and get up in the game, because we supposed to be doing this together. I'm not trying to
right,
take your place.
right.
I just want to know how we can work better together. And yeah, so I'll stop there because I know you have something to say about it too.
No, so one of the things that I tried to prepare you for is that there could be some saying some issues with communication.
Mm-hmm.
There might be some issues with communication.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes people only want to talk to the biological parent,
Mm-hmm.
so that was one of the things that I kind of like tried to prepare you about and still understanding where you was coming from as far as our line of communication because again we communicated on a regular because the girls at the time were younger, so
Mm-hmm.
we communicated on a regular. And then when we got married, I had to change up those lines of communication as far as like when we actually would hold conversations or whatever, or how we would hold conversations. So trying to be respectful at the same time to your wishes and still have conversations with the other co-parent is one of the things that for me was a different thing because that's how I had been operating for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
So just going through that process of making sure I'm respecting my wife, you, and then at the same time trying to have, still trying to have a healthy dialogue with the co-parent, was difficult. And I'm not saying that, with her, with the other co-parent, that it was 100% all their fault, because at times, there were times where like I didn't really want to hold conversations. And then sometimes they'll be trying to force the conversation, and I'm just like, let's just stop before it goes to another place. And so a lot of times, those are some of the things that we try to mitigate. I guess we try to mitigate some of those things, where I try to, and then on the other side, the co-parent tried to, then you try to. So
yeah,
it was just a lot of trying to learn and still learning, and really still learning what makes the other person tick, basically, and what are some of their triggers that get them upset. But so for me coming into this, I knew a lot of the things that you shared with me about the your ex. And so one of the things that I tried to do was I tried to reach out to him and introduce myself to him, let him know that, hey, who I am. Let's whenever you feel like talking, let's get together, let's have a conversation. And man, that just was met with a whole bunch of woo.
once again, it's the heart of the intent, right? Like the intent was in peace, but it wasn't met with peace. And so, I don't know. Do you want to share more about that, or at least explain a little bit? I guess about, because I think I watched you ebb and flow and kind of be in a roller coaster, if you will, of emotions, right? From trying to extend the olive branch, being met with resistance, and then having to like talk down DP, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So look.
That's real. So
no, this like for real. Like I had to literally forget where I was from. I had to like, hey, swallow, hey, forget where you're from. You know what I'm saying? Because the just me trying to extend an olive branch to you, and letting you know that I'm not trying to take your place.
Yeah.
This is who I am. The boys will be your boys will be around me. We need to sit down and talk and have a conversation. But that was just met with a bunch of resistance, a bunch of nonsense, and at the same time that this took place, I had to eventually check him also about cursing at my wife and doing it in front of the boys. So at the same time, I had to end up checking him at the same time, but it was still in a peaceful manner. So I had to really just like go to a place of like, all right, he's about to bring out the worst in me.
That's the same. I mean, this is, listen, I don't even know how to describe this. I think is why we're being called to share this and in the most protected way, right? Because we're not trying to bash the other co-parents. We're trying to give you the real of how this feels, like really being in this and how it can take you into this other space where it brings out the bad and the ugly. You know what I mean? Because you don't know the other person well. And so if you're coming at me with negative energy when I'm trying to that's not my intent. It's to create that atmosphere. But then I sense that, then now because you don't know me, I feel like I do have to check you. I do have to show you who I really am. Like, you're not about to run over me. You're not about to control the situation. This is our house. This is how we operate. We have boundaries. So that takes us to number 2, which is boundaries and expectations. So there are certain things that, yeah, that may have been okay and cool then, like for you to call early in the morning, and because that's when you get up and what. But if we're still in the bed, I don't expect you to be calling early in the morning. So it's things like that that is not a bad. It wasn't that it was something that's horrible, but it's just like, okay, things have changed, and so now we have to communicate these changes. Well, that's not going to feel good to the other person because they're used to doing things a certain way. So then now they feel like they've been attacked, or, because it's not the same. Well, that's just it. It's not going to be the same. And we all have to realize that it's not, and find ways to deal with that.
Right. And the biggest piece for that is the communication aspect.
Mm-hmm.
Like being able to sit down and have mature conversations, and actually explain and let you know and figure out what these boundaries are going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Especially for our household. And that's something that, like, literally I tried to do multiple times, to try to explain these boundaries. And then I just got to the point to where I'm like, you know what? I'm not dealing with it anymore.
Oh yeah,
Like,
it'll take you there.
You better deal with it.
It'll take you, and I would do the same with him. So
and
it was that created tension between us because now I'm checking for him to do it and he checking for me to do it, but we're dealing with people who are not trying to be checked at all. Like, you know what I mean? They're getting even more emboldened to stand their ground and say, this is where I stand. You know what I mean? And so we're sharing because this is what we've had to deal with. And so it's kind of like,
no, I mean, so it became a point to where you're either, going to do it or you're just going to pull back from it.
mm-hmm.
And so it got to a place for us even dealing with our communication, as husband and wife, and our communication with the co-parents, and where she felt like you're not taking care of this. And I felt like, well, you're not taking care of it.
And then I was like, well, I'm going to take care of it.
And
then that went wrong. So
right. And so, there were times, it's been a lot of times that, for me, I can, be honest with it. Like, I literally just would pull back.
Mm-hmm.
I would literally just pull back, and, almost to the point to where, I'm just like, well, I'm washing my hands with it. I'm washing my hands with it. I'm not going to deal with disrespect. I'm not going to deal with foolishness. I'm just not going to deal with a lot of the stuff. And I was putting a lot of that, pressure on you to handle your ex, you know what I'm saying? And so, and then when I felt like it like you weren't going to do it, I was just like, okay, all right, I'm doing it. It's over. I'm just going to take over. I'm going to take over and I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
And just go ahead and set these boundaries. And if they don't like it, they just don't like it. And I don't care because this is the boundaries for my household, my family, how we're going to do things, because we're trying to establish how we're going to be, and we're trying to raise the kids with us in a certain way. And so, honestly, it's been a struggle.
It remains a struggle.
It remains a struggle.
Let's be real about that. It remains a struggle.
You know what I'm saying? So,
and
we still ain't figured it all out. Like, we're still figuring it out.
We're in the pull. We're still in kind of the pull back stage of this, right? Like I know that's where I am, and I feel like you are too. But it feels somewhat forced. Like a lot of energy comes with trying to just make basic communication that's necessary as co-parents. And I want to bring this point up because it speaks to the two that we just said, communication and boundaries, like setting expectations. Is the kids are in the middle of all of this, right?
Right.
Which takes us to a third point, which is prioritizing child well-being. And something that I've noticed that, is not a good practice, but it tends to happen, especially when parents are trying to avoid talking to the other parent, is that the child becomes a conduit for communication, right, which is not healthy, right? Like,
not at all.
At all. Like, and they feel that. So they don't want to be like, well, what did your dad say? Well, what did your mom say? Like, no, that's not a thing. So to give you all something that you may want to tap into is an app. It's free, but it's, you can pay the extra for the different bells and whistles, but it's the Talking Parents app. And that is a communication, a line of communication so that you can communicate with the other parent, not through text. It monitors, like basically, it's keeping track of how you communicate with each other. I don't know if it's a filter in there that kind of keeps you from like saying certain things, but for us on my side of this, dealing with the boy's dad, we have that so that the courts can keep track of the correspondence between us. And it's actually been healthier, I think, because it cuts down on all of the, badgering and back and forth and, name calling stuff. Like, I know. And that we'll go hit on that in a minute. But
yeah, so one of the things that we wanted to talk about was the emotional maturity aspect.
That takes us to the next one.
Of it. So when I reached out and I was met with the resistance, I felt like, okay, there's still some kind of hurt there, pain there. And I tried to express that, like, I know that you've gone through something, and whatever it is that you went through, even though I already knew the truth, I still tried to make it seem like, look, I'm on your side. I'm on your side. I hate that you went through whatever it is that you went through.
That you feel
like you went through, you know what I'm saying? Even though we know the truth of what actually took place. I still tried to
massage the situation,
like, and still try to bring you into the fold. But once I saw that there was like still some kind of emotional, whatever you want to call it, with that person, that's when I was just like, look, whenever you feel like it, whenever you feel like, you want to talk or whatever, let's talk, let's meet, let's get to know each other. But his response in that, not to me, but to the boys, was, nah, he shouldn't have handled the situation like that. He should have invited us to drinks. I'm like, okay, that's you trying to control the situation. I don't drink, so I ain't inviting nobody for no drinks. But again, that was that person's way of trying to control the situation and not really wanting to have a mature conversation, in my opinion. I felt like he just wasn't trying to have a mature conversation, in my opinion. So, for me, I was just like, okay, there's something there. I'm not going to touch it. I'm not going to deal with it.
Yeah.
Until it starts affecting me and my household.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I was just like, I'm going to wash my hands of it, because there was some emotional immaturity there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think some of it too is, you can sense that, to me, the root of it is fear for everybody, right? Is fear of not being able to have the relationship that you want to have with your kids now that these other variables are added to the formula. And so, I really believe, and I'm still praying for this. I know Daniel's joining and praying for us to be a true support system for our kids, like across the board. And I know that seems very kumbaya-ish, but meaning it's far from where we are now, but right. I believe it can happen. If that fear is removed, right? Like fear of being replaced, fear of, and a lot of what I witnessed in terms of emotional immaturity was that, right? I knew it, the root of it was the fear of, if now that there's another mother figure there, am I going to be seen differently or trying to cut me out of the situation? And I think we have to understand, when we're putting our children in the center of these things, discussions and scenarios, at no point in time should children be used as pawns. Like, because you're mad at the other co-parent, then now you're trying to keep them from having time with the kids, or because an altercation happened or something that you didn't understand, one a part of, then now you're like, they're being mistreated, they can't come over there. Like, that's never the move, right? Like, and you should be mature enough to have a conversation about it, to get to the bottom of it, so that we ensure that everybody's in a good place, right?
Right.
But I think that's where, for me, that's the biggest tragedy of it all is when the kids are not getting what they need because the parents aren't emotionally mature enough to put whatever baggage aside to say, okay, that we take two, take three, like that one didn't work, that time didn't work, but let's try this again. Because we all should be evolving and getting better, right? And I know I can say, I look back on things and I'm like, man, yeah, I felt like in that moment you needed to be told, like you needed to be put in your place. But looking back on it, could I have, not put you in your place so that we can move forward? Probably. And I should have. I just wasn't in a place of my own emotional maturity within the relationship to do that, because I'm like, no, you need to know this is our house. This is how we get down. And that ain't gonna fly. And I'm just as direct as that. It was no disrespect, but that's gonna feel hard to you, right? Like that is not a soft answer.
Right.
So
right.
You gonna chew on that. You don't even want to chew on it because now you like, oh, and you this and that. No, I'm a woman I know who I am. I know who my husband is, and I know what we're doing together. So you get on board or we gonna have issues. And so guess what? We got issues. So, I mean.
Right. And, and we're all from different backgrounds.
That's it.
And we all were raised differently.
Right.
And we all come from different environments.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, where I'm from, Jackson, Mississippi, we don't play a lot of games. We're very hospitable, but we do not tolerate disrespect at all.
Yeah.
And so the one thing about it is we don't bother people unless you bother us. And so for me, it was like just an absolute struggle for me to like bite my tongue on a lot of situations. But, being honest, like, I know that I had to check, her ex a couple of times just because of the level of disrespect and not wanting to stay within the parameters of the boundaries that we were trying to set.
Mm-hmm.
So, if we're speaking, we're speaking about boundaries, like we tried to set boundaries, and you all actually had agreement
mm-hmm.
of, from the divorce or whatever, you all actually had agreements that was set in place.
Yeah.
That never wanted to, like, he never wanted to abide by those agreements. And it was just like, man, like, no one could plan around this stuff. Like, we have things going on in our family. We've already planned things. We're going certain places. We're doing certain things. Hours are set, what we have going on. We have our own schedule.
Yeah.
And then, like.
And go ahead. No, I just wanted to say, I think the piece of it that makes it different is what was the norm? Like, what was the norm before, right? Like, you see an inflection point when it's like, okay, it was this, and then it was like a little bloop, when we got married, things changed, and rightfully so. And that's on both sides of the spectrum. But that's what kind of rocks the other co-parent, because it's like, wait a minute, like it was fine. It was okay for, you were acceptable of or accepting of this behavior before, but now it's a problem. And it's like, well, yeah, because things have changed. You know what I mean? Like, it wasn't necessarily an issue when on the fly you're like, hey, can I get the boys or whatever? Because I knew you didn't have a lot of time to spend with the boys. So if you randomly, but now we have stuff that we planned, we're doing as a family. So yeah, we need to run that through like kind of I need notice. I need you to let me know when, and that's not a bad thing. It's just different. But sometimes different feels like disrespect. And it's like,
right.
You have to be in a place where you can flip the switch and understand this really isn't about you. It's just about the nature of everything has shifted a little bit, but it's not bumping you out. It's just changing. It's just a little different. And so
right. I don't know how many times you have to tell a person, like, no one's trying to take your place.
Take your place.
Like, no one's trying to take your place.
Equation or none of that. Like, if anything.
But just respect what we have going on.
Right.
Right. we're not here to move at your whim.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't know how many times you have to say it for someone to actually get it.
Yeah.
But you know, for me, boundaries
It's a
had to
big
be in
deal.
place.
It's a big
Boundaries
deal.
definitely had to be in place. And I know for you were in a place of, like I said, from like we said earlier, like we would talk in the morning before my kids would go to school, or we would talk in the evenings when basically I'm free.
Right.
I'm basically free,
Yeah.
and we would have the conversations about the kids or whatever. But you know, as the kids got older, then I kind of start, you know, like even what I did with my older ones, I didn't have to talk to the parent as much
Yeah.
because now I can just go straight to my kids because they have their own phone. They can call me and tell me
Right.
exactly what they need or what they
Right.
want.
Right.
Or they can shoot me a text message, call or text or whatever, and just let me know that stuff.
Let me say, so that's another big thing that modality, right? Communication. How are you talking, communicating with the other parent? So for me, I observe, right? So I'm cool with like having the conversation, talking about the kids. But when I start hearing things that sound like, why you say that like that? And why you you know what I mean? And it happens, right? Like that's gonna be you're observing how your partner's reacting, you're observing what the co-parent is like. I'm like, okay, now this is something different. Like you could that all of this, you know how you like that could have been an email. I'm like, that could have been a text. She just trying to hear your voice. You know what I mean? Like, and he's all like, no, it's not that or whatever. Whatever. Okay. Like let's make it about the kids and let that be it. Cause some people, to be honest, and I'm talking generally, right? Because I think you don't know somebody else's motive. You don't really know how they used to operate. You don't know, like, cause some people are just like that, right? Like they need drama to feel good, or they're naturally flirtatious or something. I don't know. I don't know. But I will say that it can complicate the situation when you're taking your notion or idea of what it means and then overlaying that on top of the situation. And so and I think some people are in denial, right? Like we may be in denial about the residue that we have from our previous relationship. So you don't know just how upset you are with somebody and how frustrated you are with how things happened in a previous relationship. So then it impacts current day, 10, 15 years later, how you're communicating. You know what I mean? So like we really do. I will say that, he said he's originally from Jackson and Mississippi, and I'm from Flint, Michigan, and I grew up the same way. Like, nah, like that don't fly. But that what we're really talking about is our flesh, right? Like we've been trained to respond a certain way,
right? But
there's a different way, and that's when it brings us to another point, which is prayer. And I know we've talked about it before, but like for this drama and this mess, you need some supernatural, divine something to come in and change this thing. And we know that, like we know that we need God to help us to get to a better place. For the sake of our kids, really, right? I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, I'm even thinking about, as your kids grow, I'm just gonna be real. I've literally been like grateful for when our kids will reach independence, right? Like, because then it's like, then I ain't got to deal with you.
Right.
However, you don't want to wish time away either, right? And you don't want to make it difficult for your kids. And my heart has hurt to see how we haven't been able to celebrate collectively, our kids when they accomplish like milestones in their lives, like graduations and things like that. It's there's still this divide, right? Mm-hmm. And we, that for the sake of our kids, like we have to get to a better space there. And obviously, I guess I want to circle back to saying all of the co-parents, I think we can confidently say, have love for our kids, right? And think they're doing what's best.
Right.
The issue, and I think what we're saying we want to work toward us, and hopefully you as well, is doing what's in the best interest of our kids collectively, right? So you're not a parent alone. We're all in this together. So how do we help fill the gap for each other? So
Right. And
Yeah.
there's things that our kids express to us that they want to do or that they need.
Right.
And that's the communication piece for that our kids say.
Yeah.
And so part of communication is being able to listen, to actually listen.
Right.
And not take what the kids say and then try to twist it into your own idea of what the kids want. Because the kids are honest. They are honest, man. They would tell you, man, and kids don't really care how they say it because they don't understand. Like, so a lot of times, what they say might hurt your feelings.
Oh, I'm glad you said. Keep going with that.
Go ahead.
Okay. No, I'm glad you said that though, because another part about the communication and prioritizing child well-being is what we say around our kids, like about the other parents, the other co-parents, right? Because they pick up on that stuff. So whether you're saying it to them directly or they're hearing you on the phone, talking bad about the other parent, like, that is not healthy. Everything you're saying could be true. It could be straight facts. But to give that poison to your children, it doesn't help you and it doesn't help your child, and it definitely doesn't help the relationship moving forward because you're just adding to baggage, right?
Right.
And that speaks to the emotional maturity piece, right? Because yeah, you know how you feel, you know what you're going through, and there may be some things that are actual facts, right? Things that have happened, events that have occurred, but when you're communicating those things around the kids, or I mean, heaven forbid, right, that is to the kids directly, but sometimes that happens, and we have to be honest about that, right? Because there have been times where you feel like they need to know the truth, right? Like, this is what happened, so that you're not confused because you've been told lies and this is exactly what happened. But for the other co-parent, they don't feel like it's lies. That's their perspective, right? Like, that's how they see it. And so it does take, I mean, it's a web.
Oh, it's a challenging thing. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just one of those things where, again, like, the communication aspect of everything is key. Mm-hmm. And, just to go back to, what we're saying is, making the kids believe one thing is, to me, it is like damaging. It's damaging to make the kids only to believe your perspective on things. So for me, conversations of dealing in actual truths and being honest about, what you did, what you said. I mean, those things to me are key for everybody to be on the same page.
And to that point, and you're absolutely right, I think that perspective is more so for older, kids that are more mature. Is some of this is about age and ability to understand and what, you know what I mean? So that's another element, because we did say our oldest is 26, the youngest is 4. So it really is about the emotional maturity of the child as well, developmentally, psychologically, like what they are able to process. So
right. And so for me, I'm never in a competition with anybody anyway. So, I hate when the parents try to make it a competition.
Yeah.
It's not a competition. It's not about who's doing more for the other person. It's not about who loves the kids more. It's not about who makes the biggest promises. To me, it's not about any of that. Like, because I'm never competing with anybody.
Yeah.
I don't have to.
And this is a piece. I'm glad you said that, because I'm going to give an example. Just a random example. I mean, it's something we can kind of relate to, but let's say Christmas, right? And let's say you feel like you the parent that's like, oh, I got all this. That's great. So now that means we don't have to do all of that. Gotta look at the other side of it, right? You do that, we'll help them get into college. You know what I mean? Right. Like, so that's where we can fill gaps, right? So it's not a competition. And if anything, the kids should feel the blessings of our outpouring for what the lane that we're in. So you also can't compare what the other person is doing, because it's like, that's okay, cool. I'm getting all these gifts, so you should be getting no, that's you. That's what
That's
God
your
put in
choice.
your heart to do.
That's your choice.
So you do that. We don't do that. We don't shower with gifts. Like that's not our love language, and we're not appealing to that part in our kids if that's theirs. Right? Like we're trying to teach a different way.
I'm never gonna do the materialistic stuff.
Yeah.
I'm never gonna teach my kids to be materialistic, and expect gifts just because. Like,
yeah. But some people, I mean, we're not saying that.
Right.
If that's your thing, that's your thing.
That's your thing.
But
like it's not a bad thing, but don't try to
compare.
Don't try to compare.
Yeah.
Don't try to make it seem like
yeah.
Oh, because they didn't buy you this, they don't love you. Like, nah.
Right.
Nah.
Yeah.
I'm just not the person, the kind of person that just gonna buy a bunch of random stuff.
Yeah.
Like a bunch of random gifts. I'm just not that kind of person. Like I'll get you the
Well, if so,
truly desire.
It's gonna be Five Below or Dollar Tree.
like no, what you truly desire. Now I'll go get that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like if it's something like I want these Jordans. Okay, if that's what you really, really want, I'll go get the Jordans.
Yeah.
Like if you want these Air Max, I'll go get the Air Max. You know, but I'm just not gonna be. All right, let's get the Jordans. Let's get the Air Max. Let's get the Timberlands. Let's get 1,000 matching outfits and all that stuff. Like,
and we're talking about special occasions.
Yeah, special occasion stuff. Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, I'll take care of your daily needs, what you need. If you know, like if you ask me for some money, I'll send you money, like things like that. But you know, it's never a situation for me where I'm trying to compete.
Yeah.
Because I just don't believe in that. Like, only time I'm competing is when I'm coaching and when I'm playing basketball. So I'm not trying to compete outside of that. Even though I am a competitive person, but you know, to me there's boundaries that I even set for myself.
Yeah.
You know, I set boundaries for myself. I set boundaries for my children. I set boundaries for the co-parents, you know, and I just believe that if you have boundaries in place and everyone can accept the boundaries and stay within the boundaries, that it can actually work out. Co-parenting could be easy. But because we're dealing with people that sometimes operate out of their flesh, and I'm not saying I'm no different because I've done that myself. That's the part that makes it so much more harder to deal with, and it brings a lot of just different emotional things with the kids, with the other co-parent, within myself, within our marriage. It brings a lot of different things to the table if people can't have communication, mature communication, and actually listen to what each other are saying.
And I will say too, to piggyback off of that, grace, right? Like all of this, everything that we've said, the communication, boundaries, setting expectations, prioritizing child well-being. What were the other ones?
Wow.
Did I say emotional maturity? Yeah, prayer. All of that is got to be seasoned with grace, right? Because at any point in time, you can be in violation of these key pieces that need to be in place, right? I might communicate wrong, or I had a bad day and I texted quickly, or I said and I didn't think about the tone or how that could be perceived, or you coming at me some kind of way. And you know, it's like it's basically like, to me anyway, in order for us to be effective in these relationships, you essentially have to like pull away from it. And I will say what has helped me is not to try to respond in the moment. Just because you got the message, whether it was through the Talking Parents app or text message, doesn't mean I got to respond right now. Because sometimes I have a visceral reaction to what you just sent me, because I'm like, really? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to allow this to control my emotions today. I'm not going to allow me, to be in a space. So you do give yourself permission to have space, and even say, if you need to, I need some time to think about this or whatever. And there have been times where I've had to take long periods. I haven't said anything because I'm just, I don't know what that's about, but I'm like, I need mental energy and like guidance to even think about responding. And that's just being honest. Like, It's true.
And I'm the opposite.
Yeah. See, and that's what I'm saying. Like, and sometimes it can take you there though, because if you got those happy thumbs and you, and there are times where I can look at him and I'm like, "Who are you texting?" I already know because I see it in his eyes, and he just. And so I know that we all love our kids. I can say that, the co-parents included. We just gotta work on how we.
No, it's for me because for me, like I want to get things over with. Mm-hmm. So you send me a text message, I'm trying to respond and get it over with. Instead of letting it linger and keep going and keep going and keep going, and I'm just like, man, let's get it over with, come to the conclusion, whatever the conclusion is gonna be, and let's move to something else. I'm the kind of person that I have a hard time just over and over and over and over again, just dealing with something. If let's just get it over with, move to the next thing, and the next thing, then the next thing.
Right.
So, but for you, it's more of, I'm gonna take my time before I respond, and I'm just like,
because I know it's going wrong when I respond in the moment. Like, there's nothing good comes of that, because you get it all, and then it's like, did we really even answer the question? No, we didn't, because I have to address how you just, that tone in what you just said. So that's the other piece, is history. Like, the person, so how they're trying to interact, and you can't go there, right? Like, it's not healthy.
Right. So, but for me, I always stay on point. Mm-hmm. Whatever we're talking about, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And once you start going to other things and trying to talk about other things, it's like, man, we talking about this. We'll talk about that later.
And me, I'm like Roman numeral 1, heading, capital A, head, like subheading 1. I mean, I'm doing that because I'm going to lay it all out. I'm going to address everything that you put in here, plus the undertones, and I will underline it. You know what I mean? So, like, that's energy. And I know, right? That's not required. It's just what I feel needs to be done. And that's why it takes time for me, because I'm like, let's pull back. And I think I need to get more in your lane and just pithy answers. Like, what are you really asking here? Let me get to that point and do that. But I'm like, nah.
And I stick to that.
Yeah.
Like, I stick to that point.
Yeah.
Like, if this is what you reached out to me about, let's talk about that. Mm-hmm. Like, we're not going to talk about anything else until we actually get this addressed. Or if I reach out to you, I don't want to talk about anything else other than let's address this.
Yes.
And then we can move forward, because to me, that's when it becomes murky.
Right.
Because you're never like you can get to a place where you're really never addressing anything.
The real thing, yeah.
You're never addressing the real thing, and nothing moves forward. So to me, like, and that's where some of the communication can kind of break down, because they might want to be talking about something else. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I'm not talking about that until we address this. And and it's just my way of trying to tackle each thing individually and not all at one time, because things can get lost in translation.
And something that I think is healthy, for the reason why it's important to have healthy relationships with the co-parents, is when our kids are going through something, they need all the help they can get, right? And it's helpful to them when they have choices, they have options, right? They can be like, you know what, I could talk to my biological mom about this, but I know how she would respond.
Right.
Maybe I should talk to my bonus mom, or, I could talk to my bonus dad about this, but I don't know how he, or they want perspective. They want to be able to get different perspectives.
And I think that's, again, we're talking about emotional maturity. I think that's the piece that a lot of times the other co-parent, that's when they start feeling like they're being left out.
But that's for us to be healthy,
right,
and mature enough to know. And this is how we share. Like, this is how we share information. This is how we collectively support. So you don't feel any type of way, when
right.
You're
And
not.
I know there were times where, boys, one of the oldest would tell me something and share something and ask me if I could relay that. Mm-hmm. to his dad in a way that his dad would understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And I literally did that,
Mm-hmm.
and basically was like, hey, just your son wants to talk to you. He just really wants to have a conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
And he just wants to feel like he's being heard.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was one of the things, like, I've tried to be that gap. And like you said, sometimes they want to talk to the other person because they feel like they're not being heard.
Mm-hmm.
So I've tried to bridge that gap a lot of times, and and then you can be met with resistance even from that.
And I will say this too. I mean, because at the heart of it, the biological parents have the deeper connection by blood and DNA. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
Let's just start there. So it's never a desire to try to remove that relationship or in any way. And so our kids are always seeking deeper relationships with us, whether we're the biological or the bonus. And it's just about supporting them. So, like, I appreciated when you did that. I also knew that it wasn't going to be received well, because you know who you're dealing with. And
and for me, I didn't care because it was.
He was prioritizing the child.
I'm prioritizing the child. Yeah. I don't care how you feel about it.
Right.
I'm prioritizing the child. Right. And my first responsibility is always the children. And
if you think about it, and I know we're probably out of time. Are we? Oh yeah.
Man, I told you it could be a Cat Williams episode.
This was gonna be longer, right?
Man, we can go another 2 hours, man. I'm telling you, because there's a lot of things we can actually share and talk about that we've gone through that we can possibly help somebody else get through those situations. But
we'll see. It might be a mini
but again,
But I was just gonna say, I feel like there's a reckoning, right? Like you can do this stuff, we can do this stuff, like, and feel like, yeah, I said that and I did that and whatever, and go about life, and it's just, you deal with the consequences, right? But let's be real about the fact that one day we will have to reckon with all of this, right? Like every word that we say is recorded in heaven. That's a real thing. Right. Like, that's not a joke. That's not a game. Look it up. So at some point you will have to answer for how you treated each other, how you treated the other parents, how you treated your bonus kids, how you treated your biological kids. Like, all of that will have to be summoned and answered for. And so I think all of us, right, at any point in time when we know we've been in the wrong, the move is to ask for forgiveness, to repent, and then ask for forgiveness with that other parent, with the child, whoever received the wrath of your pain, right? That inflicted pain upon them.
Yeah.
But that's okay, right? Like, and that's why I said we got to season this thing with grace, because at any point in time we can be in violation of this, or the other parents can be in a violation, and it's kind of okay, you were having a bad day, or you still haven't gotten there yet, and that's okay, right? Like, we praying you through that, because we need to be in a different place for the sake of our kids. That's what it boils down to at the end of the day.
Right. And for me, I'm protective. So I'm very protective. I'm protective of my kids, and I'm protective of my bonus kids, and I'm protective of my wife. Mm-hmm. And so for me, I'm always going to be in that mode of being protective and only looking out for their well-being. Which, again, I'm not saying that's a bad thing, and I'm not saying it's a great thing, you know what I'm saying? But there is somebody else on the other side, is what I'm saying, mm-hmm. that's going to feel a certain way, regardless of what you do or mm-hmm. or how you say it or what you say. There's somebody on the other side that's always going to feel a certain way. Mm-hmm. So trying to, like, protect everybody. Mm-hmm. is what you should be doing, mm-hmm. like what you should try to do. But my priority is always my family. Mm-hmm. My priority is always my family. My priority is always going to be my wife. Mm-hmm. My priority is always going to be my children, my mm-hmm. biological and my bonus children. So for me, I'm always going to be in a place of what's best for the kids.
Yeah.
What's best for the kids. What's best for the kids.
That's where I think the center piece of all of this is that, right? What's best for them. And I don't know, my last little parting statement here is just around, you don't always have to be right. Like, you may know you're right, but you don't have to prove it. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to make sure they know that you're right. Like, just, take that on the chin. Like, for the sake of the kids, we just gonna
Right.
keep this moving.
Right.
So,
I mean, so overall, like just trying to have effective communication. That's key. That's number one. That's key.
mhm,
Keeping it about the kids is key. What's
mhm,
best for the kids, their well being,
mhm,
always should be key.
mhm,
Being able to be in a place of um, not taking your emotional baggage or emotional hurt into conversations with the kids.
mhm,
That's key as well. And having boundaries, set boundaries.
mhm.
Like you got to have boundaries. You got to set boundaries, and you have to make sure those boundaries are not crossed. And because sometimes people are habitual line steppers
Habitual lifestyle.
habitual line steppers. So you got to make sure that those, like, you just got to make sure the boundaries stay in place. And
Yeah.
so, and I would say, never, never, never relax on that piece. Never relax on the boundaries piece. Like you got to keep your boundaries in place. And then just always make sure it's whatever it is, whatever decisions being made, the decisions need to be made together. Like there should never be a situation of the kids, I'm taking the kids to another country and the other parent don't know.
Yeah,
That
that goes back to communication.
communication piece.
Anything could happen,
Like
right?
there,
Anything.
there should never, to me, there should never be a situation of the other parent not being on the school's information, like
Hmm.
as far as an emergency contact.
Hmm.
The co-parent should be on the contact information as an emergency contact.
Unless there's a
Uh,
reason why that co-parent should not.
right,
Yeah, like
unless you
there's some,
unless there's
yeah,
some other stuff that you may be
some
dealing
other
with.
issue. Yeah.
And then like keep the kids first,
Hmm.
keep the children first, keep their well-being first, and then just pray. Like
Hmm.
you have to you have to pray a lot. Like pray a lot. Pray for always. For me, I always pray for the healing of the children. Whatever
Why did you just say that like that?
the healing of the
The
children.
healing of the children.
Because they're affected by, what I'm saying, like kids are affected by divorce, they're affected
Yeah,
by
that's true.
separation, they're affected by daily things that they
The
go through,
tension that
the
they know,
tension that they
they
feel,
feel. Yeah.
or they're affected by what the other parent is saying on the other side of things, and what I'm saying. And oh, and one thing that I didn't touch on, what I've always been the person when I'm dealing with my children. Whatever you do at your house, that's what you do at your house.
Yes.
Whatever rules you set
That's a
for
good
your
one.
house
That's a good one.
are the rules you set for your house.
Yeah.
So in turn, I don't expect for you to be trying to tell my kids what
What to
they can
do when
do
they're at our house.
in my house.
Yeah. Yeah.
To me, that's a big no-no.
Yeah.
Like that's a big no-no. That's a red flag. Like,
Mhm.
so I don't try to parent your household. I don't
Right.
try to parent your time. I don't try to be
Right.
involved in what you got going on with your kids, with
Mhm.
with the kids when they're
Mhm.
with you.
Right.
And so in turn, like that should never happen with the co-parent. The co-parent should never be involved in
Oh.
talking about
Yeah.
the kids telling the kids what they should and can do at our
Yeah.
house and thinking they
Yeah.
run things. Like that is a
So I have one more thing that just came to me when you said that, because that was a really good point. And it's around the beginning stages, right? Like when you're in the situation changes. For instance, for me, when we went through the divorce and then now we have to figure out this time sharing thing. I remember the first time, so the boys were with me primarily throughout the school year, but then we would share, switch on major holidays and spring break and summers, they would leave. And I remember just being so like depressed about that. You know what I mean? Like I was just kind of like, gosh, like I know it seems good that I have them the majority of the time, but we're in go 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 mode, and I'm like, and he gets to be fun dad, right? Like you have those times, and I remember just feeling the first, year or so of that. I remember just being so down about it, right? And then God showed me, like, this is you look at the bright side of it, right? Like, this is time for you to do some of the things you couldn't do when you were in full parent mode. So, do that. Spend some time with your friends, spend time with me, like things that I knew I needed to do. Some of the goals that I set, checking some of those things off the list. So I'm saying that because I don't know who's listening, but if you're in that space where, like, this is new to you, you've been having your kids 100% of the time, and now you got to share, and that's like, and then also to the co-parents that, yeah, you may have had some time sharing that happened between the two biological parents, but now that there's another person involved, that can be depressing as well, because now you're like, they come back home, they're like, we had fun, we did this, and it starts to feel a certain way, right? Because you're just like, okay, all right, like so I'm putting that out there because I think it is something we should recognize that can feel depressing.
Right. So yeah, boundaries.
Boundaries, yep.
Never negotiate boundaries. Never negotiate boundaries.
We kept it under an hour.
Yeah, so
we did it.
No, those are some of my takeaways on it, and
Yeah.
I just feel like when you get to a place of the communication aspect, the emotional maturity, the boundaries, and the putting the kids first at all times,
Mm-hmm.
and the prayer, I think things work out for the best.
Mm-hmm.
But it's always a learning process, and and again, we're human. So it's not like we're not robots. So
Right.
we're not programmed to only do those things. So we're gonna have those times where we're gonna fall short in one of those areas. And
Mm-hmm.
to what you alluded to is having a grace, to having grace in those times. But again, if we can keep the main things,
Mm-hmm.
then issues limit themselves. If we can
Yeah.
just keep the main things, and,
Yep.
and not go to into an emotional state.
Yep.
And sometimes you do have to withdraw a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's for your own health and sanity. But
Hey, that's a good segue.
Yeah.
Next week, we're going to be addressing health and wellness. So that'll
Right.
be our next.
yeah, so so I just think if everybody, co-parents, biological parents, whatever, could keep the main thing,
Mm-hmm.
that's going to help everybody in the long run.
Yep. Well, that's it. You close that one out. So we'll see you next week. Hopefully this was helpful. If
Yeah.
so, please like, share, subscribe, follow, comment if you're watching this on YouTube so we can get your take on this and any other feedback or
Right.
suggestions you may have.
Right.
Because we're not saying we're experts on this. We're sharing our struggles and saying,
Right.
these are lessons learned.
Yeah, and follow me if you want to get more details on some of the things that I didn't share.
Absolutely not. Do follow
Enjoy
me.
yourself. Enjoy yourself. I hope we were able to help you in any kind of way. And be blessed.